Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Oh no, I don't know how I'm going to get my news anymore if I can't get it on Facebook, Steve. What's happening with the world? Up is down, black is white. It's all just gone. But thankfully, I took a minute or two to do some research, and before we get on to the Facebook topic, which we will inevitably get onto, I was able to find some news around the Perseverance landing on Mars, just as a follow-up to last week where we were discussing the various rovers that were getting sent there, etc. And it's a good news story in the sense that, and I always like it when they talk about the 7 minutes that they're deeply anxious that whether or not it's going to get through the atmosphere because they don't know whether it's made there and all that sort of stuff. And it's already started sending some really cool images back already. And it's just a really good achievement just to be able to see that happen, and it got executed and now it can go about its business.
Absolutely. It is a great achievement. It's super exciting. And this is really the start of humans going to Mars. This is a mission that's really geared around what I guess future missions will be working on. There's a whole lot of samples that Perseverance that will take that looks like will be collected and returned to Earth once humans get there. So this is really cool, and the pictures are great, and we're going to see a lot more excellent imagery, I think, from Perseverance.
One last thing I wanted to mention about this story too was just how it's like for 5 minutes people forget about whatever they were arguing about, and there's like a collective celebration across the board of wow, we did this thing, and there were various interested people around the world were all watching it, and it's an example of how something like this can potentially provide a shared experience for people, maybe to bring them together occasionally. Although I had the subsequent thought of, I'm not sure if you've seen the TV show The Expanse that I've been streaming, but essentially, that deals with a future where there's various parties all fighting with each other out in the solar system, and I just figure, after we get past the adulation and the excitement of this sort of stuff, that once it all becomes the norm, we'll just go back to fighting over whatever resources there are out there. But that might be a bit cynical.
Look, I like to take the utopian point of view, a bit Star Trekky, I guess, but that space and our exploration of space and moving beyond the planet will bring us together as the human species for the benefit of all inhabitants of Earth, including animals, plants, and whatever. So
it's a good future to aspire to, but moving back to our 2021 reality and the story of the week, and the world's paying attention to it, I guess, to see how it kind of plays out from a precedent point of view. Facebook took the nuclear option and decided to ban all Australian news on its platform in retaliation against the draft media code that the Australian government put up. Basically, that would have forced them to pay for linking to news content, Australian news content, etc., on its platform. Now, just as a side thing before we get onto Facebook, though, obviously there was the side story that was very quiet this week that Google cut a whole bunch of deals in the background with individual media outlets to facilitate it. So their approach was to do some deals on the side and just sort of quietly move along. Facebook's obviously taken the opposite high-profile response, and the reaction was quite hysterical this week, I must say.
Well, before we move on to the Facebook side of things, I do have to say that probably the way the Australian government handled the Facebook issue doesn't give me much confidence that they did or cut very good deals with Google, to be quite honest. But yes, the Facebook issue, or whatever, Facebook's choice, I think has really revealed a lot about the fact that not very many people outside of Facebook actually understand how Facebook works.
Yeah, well, and the key to that, I think, is just the idea that, I mean, obviously it's probably a bit more technically complicated than this, but that essentially they've got check boxes and can just switch something off if they want to. And they've got that global reach now that it can affect millions and millions of people if they decide to uncheck a tick box in their algorithm.
And look, the way I interpreted the draft bill, or the purpose of the draft bill, was to give Facebook a choice. And Google made a choice, and Facebook's choice was either to pay or to not carry any news content. And they chose the latter. And I thought that I thought it was probably not very friendly of Facebook to do that, but well within their rights. So as someone who doesn't use Facebook, I guess, I thought it was fair enough that they chose one of the two choices. But the discussion that we've seen around it makes me wonder if anyone actually understood that Facebook was a private business that basically sells advertising. Okay, so there's no news. You're going to have to get it somewhere else, everyone. Or the argument would be now that Facebook has a right to charge news companies subscriptions to distribute their news on Facebook. And that's a business model that maybe Zuck will be adopting, which means then the Australian experience is completely backfired because people didn't really understand what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I did want to just touch on was, and this is the thing that horrified me more than anything else, was just the sheer high statistics of people that literally only go to Facebook for their news. Now, I think I'm paraphrasing, I'm hoping I'm getting it right, but I think in Australia it was 40% that were directly getting it from Facebook, 75% from social media in general. That seems like such a high number, and like the experience of hearing people freak out that they couldn't get their news because Facebook had turned it off. I mean, seriously, like, I won't rant on this too much, but is it really that hard to just spend 60 seconds to, and I find this ironic, going to Google to do a quick search? You can go to news sites directly. I've never ever sourced my news from Facebook because, I mean, aside from the fact that I know where to go to get it, because I've known it for quite some time, whether it's an individual news site or an aggregator. Like that's another aspect to it too. There are plenty of really good aggregating websites or apps that you can tailor to your specific needs and interests and just have them come up in a feed separately that don't even require you to go to Facebook or anything. And I guess that's just the bit that really kind of freaked me out because to me, the thought of going to Facebook for news seems like walking into a minefield of rubbish and disinformation and whatever else that is mixed in with any potentially good news stories that might be linked there.
That is precisely my concern, Ben. And it just depends how you want to interpret the stat. So you can interpret the stat that 40% of people only get legitimate news through Facebook, okay, and 75 only get it through socials. But let's just go with the 40% that only get it through Facebook. And then somehow them not receiving that news through Facebook is a bad thing, for whatever reason. One, they don't have any access to news, which, as you've just debunked, isn't true. And two, the other thing is then that means all that is on Facebook is rubbish. Well, even if Facebook had news on there, as you just pointed out, it comes in a stream of rubbish that is used by politicians to justify things to their advantage and used by community groups, although maybe for good causes, to legitimise their media releases, to basically launder, effectively, let's call it good fake news. So not that there should really be any quality of fake news. It's all rubbish. So the point is that the real concern is that people ever got news from a sewer, effectively.
Yeah, we're certainly ringing the greatest endorsements of Facebook here. And one of the things that I actually thought might be an interesting side effect of this, if you can call it that, is that if, like, say, this is like the test case, Facebook pulls news out of its platform for Australia, and then maybe, if who knows what other governments will do if they try to go down the same path, that Facebook might in the end just unilaterally just say, all right, that's it, we're pulling all news out of Facebook, and it might actually become better. Like, it might actually go back to organizing dates and parties and sharing photos, which was actually the original intent of the platform.
I couldn't agree more with you, Ben. That's why I don't understand why there's been any negative reaction to Facebook pulling news. That was the choice they were given. That was the choice they made. You know, sure, maybe it's a little bit aggressive, or perhaps it's, they could have been a little bit more, I guess, sort of bit of consensus, or had a bit of discussion with us about it, rather than just pull the pin overnight without warning. But it's a legitimate choice. And if they were to remove news from all around the world from there, then I think you're right. If Facebook went back to being a social platform, at least that would bring some advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if it would totally fix the fake news sort of side of things. Because the reality is that people can just post whatever crap they want on there still, and it wouldn't get caught up in that filter unless they decided to take more action on that. But I don't really see that happening because they make money off it.
Exactly. I think the thing that, from my perspective, and I haven't used Facebook for 4 years, so I'm quite bemused by why anyone would be concerned about this. But having the visibility now, if people can't use news on Facebook and it is reduced to fake news and satire and vitriol in both those forms, and then in its own personal trolling, I guess, sort of form, and stalking form, and all the things about Facebook that are truly nasty and unpleasant, but they're made visible, then I think that's also a benefit for us all. So for me, I see this as a step probably in the right direction.
Absolutely. And just full disclosure too, obviously for both of us, I don't use, I've got like a personal account, but I don't think I've used it. I can't even remember the last time I used it. Obviously, you haven't used yours as well. We do have a page on Facebook for the podcast, but that's more like a rolling set of announcements for when we post, new videos or whatever, a bit like what we do on Twitter as well. And it just and otherwise there wouldn't be like that any more of that engagement, because and I think this is where it's important. You should really, and this is why we're not just in one place. I think anyone that is using any of these platforms should really not hitch a ride on just one, or bank on one platform to be your entire, sort of like if your revenue stream was coming entirely from Facebook because of what you're posting on there, and then they flick the switch. There was a story about I don't know if they were an upstart or a new media company, a news company that was doing everything through their Facebook page, and their revenues dropped 80% as soon as they flicked the switch. To me, that suggests that maybe they should have done a bit more thinking about diversifying where they've placed themselves, and not relying on a platform like Facebook entirely to do something like that.
Well, it's very poor due diligence from a risk management perspective if anyone would ever put their entire business into the hands of a single channel, which is what Facebook is.
Yeah.
So, I would never invest in a business like that. I would never invest in a business that had Facebook as its vehicle. I mean, that's another company that you've got no control over. And this is a good example of a company that, has made a decision, and it's been forced to make the decision too, I think is worth pointing out. Nasty all round.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, just in terms of final thoughts on this, who knows how it'll play out. I would think, like if it was me, I'd just say, thanks for coming. See you later. It's been great. Off you go, kind of thing. That would be my approach to the whole thing. But I just, with the landscape the way it is, and this, for all the ill will that's thrown, not ill will, like I guess negative coverage that Facebook generates even on its own about itself, and the fact that so many people are dissatisfied with its role in society, etc. The fact that it is that kind of surprised me about the backlash, by all the media outlets and whoever else was taken by surprise by this. That if Facebook is considered like not that great a place to be anyway now because of what it's turned into, what are you worried about, kind of thing?
Exactly, and I think that this is, I think it's positive that Facebook made a decision. I'm not sure that the decision was a positive one, but it's positive that they made a decision. It's been done. People now can vote. People now can vote by their use of Facebook or not. And this idea that anyone really needs Facebook, if you fall into that basket, then I think Facebook's done you a favour.
Absolutely. All right, we'll wrap it up there. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there and watch all of our videos on any and all of your devices, and we greatly appreciate your views and visits. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.